Hi, students and family members, it's Mr. Panza. More recently, we've been talking about Christopher Columbus. Now, what I like to call this unit is not just Columbus, but Columbus and the Copycats. Here's why. There were major positive and negative impacts that Columbus had in sailing west and discovering a new land. One of the impacts that certainly happened was the copycats, meaning lots of people saw what Columbus did and wanted the same exact thing. Sometimes when you see something you really like, for example, this piece of pizza, you say, I want a slice too. It makes me feel happy and I want it. So, explorers felt the same thing when Columbus was returning from the new land, talking about how he was settling and how he was becoming famous and making money. They wanted the same experience. So, other countries on top of explorers decided they were going to start sending people to and from Europe to the new American islands and other areas. In other words, they saw their pizza and they were going after it. Some of those copycats were Cabral from Portugal. Now, this is not Portugal. This is South America. South America is on the western hemisphere. Portugal, where Cabral is from, is over on the eastern hemisphere. So Cabral, a very well-known Portugal explorer, was one of those early explorers that copied Columbus and came over to South America and started to settle land. Another copycat was Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci from Italy traveled to the Americas. You can see Florida down here, the Caribbean islands, in between there, Central America. Amerigo Vespucci made so many trips that he actually got to name America. His first name, Amerigo, is where the name America comes from. Vasco Núñez de Balboa ended up in Central America, in between North and South America at the Panama Canal, where the Panama Canal currently is. And when he got there, they left their boats, cut through all of the jungles, went over mountains, and finally made it through to the other side. And on the other side was the Pacific Ocean. Pretty big discovery for Balboa of Spain, who then obviously would be able to continue his trip had he had the desire to continue westward. Magellan, he was the one that also wanted to go west, but wanted to go west and find Asia. When they realized that Columbus went west and hit this huge amount of land, and others started to go slightly south and hit the same chunk of land, Magellan was one of the people that believed, well, you could go south around South America, much like Diaz and da Gama, the Portugal explorers went south around Africa to get to India. Magellan thought, I can go west, then south, and eventually pop up towards India. And he, although he died on his trip, was the first to circumnavigate the globe and prove that Columbus was correct. You could sail west, which would eventually hit the Eastern Hemisphere, which would eventually then get you over to Asia. Here's some questions I want you to think about. The explorer that claimed Eastern South America for Portugal was Cabral. Pedro Alvarez Cabral from Portugal was claiming a majority of the land for South America in 1500 for Portugal. Amerigo Vespucci, question 2, was a sailor who traveled to South America and the Caribbean, copying exactly what Columbus was doing, and did it so frequently that he named so many things they eventually named the continents after Amerigo. It became America. How did Balboa reach the Pacific Ocean? Well, he sailed to the present-day Panama Canal, passed through the mountains and jungles, and then cut through it to the other side where the Pacific Ocean was waiting for him. And Magellan's crew, who, again, Magellan didn't totally make it, but his crew continued traveling westward, circumnavigated the world, and they proved that Christopher Columbus was correct, saying that you could sail west to reach Asia. Speaking of Magellan, the vocabulary word for this unit, circumnavigate, means to sail completely around something. And although Magellan and his crew started with a whole mess of boats and 241 on the trip, there were only 18 that survived and made it all the way around. However, the positive impact of those 18 surviving was it proved that you could go completely around something. Circumnavigating the globe also proved that the world was not flat. This has been information on Columbus and his copycats.